Most of you all think that you need a whole bunch of money to start buying houses. So what you do is you tell yourself you're going to wait for the right time to come around. And let me tell you, the right time is when you make the right time. I started buying houses in 2011. I was in my early 20s and I did not have a lot of money. And since then, I bought hundreds of houses. And I'm going to go through with you today 5 strategies that you can implement today to go out and fund your first house deal. And I've used all 5 of these myself. We're going to go through each one. I'll show you how they actually work. And more importantly, we're going to rate them based upon 5 metrics. How much cash you're going to need, if any. Your level of bankability, as we call it. You see, some of these options do require a bank. Not all of them, so don't click off just yet. There are options that don't require a bank. But if we're going through a bank, a certain amount of bank ability is required, which is basically the tests, the requirements that the banks will have before they give you any money. Number 3 are the skills required. Some may require less cash and less bankability, but more skills like sales, being able to go out and snuff out deals, bird dog deals, or maybe strong project management skills. Number 4 is risk. Certain strategies are riskier than others. And number 5 is your work ethic. Maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. Now let's get right into it. Strategy number 1 is the FHA plus DIY. And this is actually the way that I bought my very first house. An FHA loan from the bank. And with an FHA loan, the amount of cash that you need to put down is 3.5%. So if you go and buy a house for $200,000, your down payment is going to be 3.5%. So that's $7,000. Now, I know a lot of you are saying maybe you don't have $7,000 spare in the bank. For one, you probably need to save up at least a little bit of cash before you go trying to invest in real estate. Number 2 is bankability. So like I said before, the bank has certain requirements. They're going to look at a couple important things. One is your credit score. Most of you know what that means. But FHA loans actually have lower requirements for credit than other loans do because, now this is a very important point, because you are buying a house with an FHA loan because it's going to be your primary residence. And that's why the FHA will give you a loan with lower credit and lower down payments because you're going to be living in that house yourself for at least 1 year. So you got to realize that with this strategy, it's not a flip it really quick and sell it. It's that you're going to have to live there for a year. So it's more like a slow flip. Now, the second requirement that the bank's going to look at is what's called your DTI, your debt to income ratio. What that means is they take a certain percentage of the money that you bring in every month. For easy math, let's say that you bring in $5,000 a month. Generally, they're going to take 40% of that. So 40% of $5,000 is $2,000. And they're going to make sure that the loan payment, the mortgage payment, the principal plus the interest, and your insurance and taxes are going to be less than $2,000 a month. If you make $5,000, 40% is $2,000. That's your debt to income ratio. That's your bankability. So cash, we're going to give a score of a 3. You need to bring 3.5%. We're going to say that's a 3 on a scale from 1 to 10. Bankability is more like a 7. Getting a loan from a bank is certainly tougher than some of these other strategies that we have, but it is a great strategy because skills, you're going to need like a 2 to 3 on the skill level. You're going to go in and DIY this house. So when you buy a house from a bank, they're going to make sure that the house is livable. That means that you can go live in it today. You can't buy a house that's bombed out, that doesn't have mechanical, electrical, plumbing. It's going to be a house that you buy that probably needs some updating. It's a house that's got 80s finishes in it. So you might go in, do new floors, new paint, new hardware on the doors and the hinges. Maybe you put some new hardware on the cabinets. Maybe you paint the cabinets. You do some landscaping outside. You really freshen up the house. But these are all things that if you work at it hard enough, you can actually do these jobs yourself, DIY them. The risk level with a bank loan like this is going to be really low. This is also going to be about a 2 to 3 on the scale. Because think about this. You're already paying for somewhere to live. You're already paying rent. So instead of making somebody else rich, now you're making yourself rich. Instead of paying rent, you're paying your mortgage. So you're actually paying down the principal, the amount you owe on the house as you're living there. So you really don't add an extra expense. So your risk level is really low. You need a place to live anyway. Work ethic is going to be a little bit higher here because you're going to do this work yourself. It's a different kind of work than we're going to get into here in the future. So that's your FHA plus DIY strategy. So what are the steps that you take here? Well, you're simply going to go to a bank. Most of them are going to have FHA options, and start talking with these lenders and figure out what you need to do. You're going to have to give them a lot of paperwork. You're going to have to give them tax returns. You're going to have to show them how much money you're making. You'll go through a lot of admin. But if you're able to get this loan, this is certainly the best and safest way to start, in my opinion. Now, maybe you don't want to do the work yourself, and that's where we get to the second option. And here is a belief that most people have when it comes to FHA loans, is that you can only get one. It's your first-time buyer type of loan. And maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. However, if you do read through the fine print, there are potentially some loopholes to that, because I personally bought my second house with an FHA loan as well. Once again, you do have to read the fine print. I found out that since I was moving because of my job, I still had a job at that time, so I was fixing up the houses at night after work. But since my job moved me to a different area, I was able to get another FHA loan. I actually put a tenant in my first house, and then I moved to another house that I bought FHA, but it wasn't just an FHA loan this time. I added on top of it what's called a 203K loan. This is where the bank will actually give you money to do the renovation. However, there is a catch with that. You have to hire a FHA approved contractor. So the contractors go through whatever process to get their FHA certification, maybe is the right word. And the bank, in my situation, actually gave me a list of all the contractors in the area who had this particular certification, and I went through them. I got bids to do the work on the house that I was buying, and I ended up going through all that paperwork, bought the house, 203K with an FHA loan. I did around a $60,000 renovation on it, and this was a great way to dip my toes into managing contractors. I did it really poorly, botched the whole job. It was not a good situation. However, on top of what I hired the contractor to do, I also did some DIY work outside of the renovation that they got hired for. Now, I do want to say one thing on the number one, FHA plus DIY. I do DIY in that situation because I was trying to save every dime that I could. If I did all the work myself, all I had to do was buy material, and that was a lot cheaper, and I didn't have a lot of money at the time. Of course, you could, if you had the cash, go hire a contractor in strategy number one. But in strategy number two, the bank actually gives you money to hire the contractor. So cash in this case is going to be a little bit higher because since you're buying the house for, let's say, $200,000, and then you're also doing a renovation, let's say that's $50,000. Well, you're still bringing that same 3.5%, but now it's on a larger number. It's the acquisition price plus the renovation cost. So now instead of that $7,000, we're talking about $8,750. And because the costs of acquisition plus renovation are probably a little bit higher. Also, you're going to have a better DTI, the debt to income ratio, since your mortgage payment will be a little bit higher. Your monthly income will have to be a little bit higher to cover that. Credit score is going to be about the same with either option. So your bankability is probably around a 7 on this one. Skills, we're going to go a little bit higher here, a 4 to 5. You're going to need to get better at managing contractors, but your risk is still really low on this because this is a personal residence. Remember, an FHA loan, even with the 203K on top, means that it's your primary residence. So they're going to require you to live in that house for at least a year. But since it's your house that you're living in, you already have to pay to live somewhere. So now you're just paying to live in the house that you're investing in. So I would say risk is really low here. And finally, work ethic. is actually going to be a little bit lower here because you're hiring somebody to do the work. You don't have to do all that work yourself. However, you are going to have to work harder because now you're becoming a project manager. So same process here. You're going to go down to the bank. You're going to talk to lenders. You're going to ask them about the 203K loan. You're going to have to do a bunch of admin work. You're going to have to give them all your tax records, all that crap. Now, one more note on both of these. You are going to be buying a livable house because remember, FHA is not going to give you a loan for a house that's not livable today. You can't go buy a bombed out house and do a 203K loan. You will be able to do a little bit more of a bombed out house here with the 203K loan because there will be a renovation aspect. So if you can prove to the bank that it will be livable afterwards, you can buy probably a little bit of a cheaper house because it needs more work. But these houses, both of these in my situation, I bought right off the market, right through a real estate agent. I didn't get crazy buying off-market houses or anything like that. I didn't get any special deals, didn't do any sales to get these houses. Just bought something right off of the market. Now, for all of you guys that are listening that say, well, I can't get a loan from a bank because I have a really crappy credit score, or maybe you don't have any DTI, maybe you're not showing enough income, maybe you simply don't want to go through a bank. Well, there are options that don't use a bank at all. And in fact, they couldn't give a crap less about your personal situation with your credit and your DTI. All they care about is the deal itself because they're going to give you a loan based upon the value of the house, but not the value of the house today, the value of the house after it's renovated. And that is what's called a hard money loan. Now, it's really important to understand that I certainly use hard money loans. I still use them to this day. But this is like turning a fire hose on, guys. You are going to have points that you pay on the front end. So let's just use the example of buying a house for $150,000 and the renovation is going to be $50,000. So all in costs are going to be $150 plus the 50, that's $200,000 total. This hard money lender is going to look at the after repair value. So after you put the $50,000 of renovation into this house, it's going to be worth $300,000 based on what other houses in the area are selling for. And generally, these hard money lenders will give you around 70% loan to after repair value. So that means they'll give you 70% of that $300,000. That's $210,000. Remember, you only needed $150 plus the 50, $200,000. So they're going to cover your loan cost. However, these loans have a lot higher interest rates than your bank loans, like an FHA. It's going to have interest rates that are more like 12%, some up to 14 or 15%. And they're also going to have points that you have to pay up front. So on this loan of $200,000 that we just talked about, you'll generally have to pay 2 points at least on the front end. And 2 points means 2 percentage points. So 1% of $200,000 is $2,000. 2 points, 2% is $4,000. So you're going to have to come out of pocket $4,000 right from the start. So less cash from the start. We'll give that a 2. That's a really low amount of cash, $4,000. And your bankability, well, this is a 2, guys. And really, it might be like a 0 to 1. I just felt like I needed to put at least a 2 there. They really don't care about this at all. They only care about the strength of the deal. I just feel weird putting a 0 there, like nothing can be 0 because nothing's as easy as it seems. Your skill level though, gosh, like I said, you are turned on a fire hose with that interest rate. And you really need to make sure that you gain a lot of knowledge before you do this, because if things go south, well, you don't have any other money to go tap into, and you have a high monthly payment that does not shut off until you sell that house or refinance it to hold it as a rental. So I want you to make sure that you spend a lot of time gaining knowledge first, and hopefully gaining some experience on something that is maybe a little bit easier. And I have some better options, maybe some suggested options coming up here. Your risk level also, this is very high, guys. It's a fire hose. Work ethic, we're going to say a 7 or an 8 here, because the thing that makes the hard money loan so powerful is you have to get a really strong deal on the front end. You have to go buy that house for $150,000 that still has room for a $50,000 renovation and then is going to be worth $300,000. That's like a pretty normal type of spread for a house flip like that. And those deals are not deals that you find on the MLS. Now, I do a lot of content about how to go out and find deals, how to manage these contractors to make it a little bit safer for you so you can gain some knowledge, so then you can go out and use that and gain experience. But I just want you to know that you can't just blindly go out there and get a hard money loan. However, these guys do want to give you money. I mean, that's how they make a living. They make a living by writing loans for you. And that's an important thing to understand, because when I was first starting out, I felt like I needed to be on my knees begging people to give me money. But the reality is they need you to make their business make money by writing loans. And so as long as you go out and find a good deal, they're going to give you the money. I just want to make sure that you're in a position where you're not going to get burnt by that fire hose. Odd thing to say, because the fire hose probably saves you from getting burnt, but you get the idea. Now, how do you go out and get a hard money loan? Well, guys, they're all over the place. Like, I've seen more hard money lenders than I've ever seen in my life. They are popping up everywhere because there are people who want to lend their money and get interest earned on it. And people like real estate generally because it is generally a safe investment. It's a house, a hard asset. So literally go type into Google, hard money lender. You'll find them. I promise. Next is private equity. This one I have mixed feelings about. I have certainly raised private money, which basically means you're getting money from people. And a lot of times the way that people get money from private citizens is like the rich uncle or friends and family. And that is not a method that I have used personally. So I'm not going to speak on that very much, because I think that your friends and family will give you money because of the relationship you have with them. But if you don't have a high level of skills, you're not only putting yourself at risk, you're really putting them at risk. They're giving you money because they trust you. So make sure you earn that trust by first having some experience under your belt, being really good at flipping houses before you go ask for money from somebody you have a relationship with. However, there is another way to raise money from accredited investors. These are people who are seeking out investment opportunities. And I really want to emphasize that this is an option, and this is an option that I've executed. However, I didn't do it until a decade of flipping houses and buying rentals. And I owned a lot of rentals the first time I implemented a strategy like this. And I felt like I needed to put it on the list because it is a way that you can buy houses, and truly you can buy houses for no cash because you raise all the money. You need no bankability. You need a high level of skills because you're actually going to go have to sell people on your vision of this house. Your risk level is going to be really low. Like I said, I hate putting just a zero, but your risk level is going to be really low because the thing that you're really risking is your relationship capital. You're risking your reputation, but you're not really risking your own money. If you set this up in the proper way, your work ethic, gosh dang, better be really high if you're going to ask people for money and use it in a way that is inherently risky. Even though real estate is not a risky investment, in my opinion, you're still doing risky things. You are putting people's money on the line. And I think you better be willing to earn that if you're going to do it. I also, once again, don't think you should do this until you have some experience under your belt and can really call yourself great at this. And one more thing to say about that. If that is a strategy that you want to implement, and I've seen people do it that have a lot less experience than me, I've also seen it turn out really poorly for those people. If you're going to do this, you need to get legal counsel on your side. You need to have somebody write up these contracts in a way that is correct. And I'm certainly not going to be giving you any of that advice. And once again, saying it for the last time, but my advice is do not use that strategy to start. Save it for later once you're experienced, and you will be if you stick with it. I promise. Now, the final strategy is my favorite strategy for you if you can't do one of these first two. Those first two are certainly the best strategies for beginners if you have bankability and the cash to be able to do it. But number 5 is partnership. And this is a method that I still use to this day. And I certainly think that you should use it when you're starting out and even into the future. And here's how this works. It's not just any partner. It's not your buddy who also wants to flip houses and invest in real estate. Partnerships are best when they're opposites, because opposites attract. Now, there's different types of partners. Maybe in a active business that you're seeking out, you might find a partner who has opposite skills to yours. Maybe you're great at sales and marketing and they're great at operations and systems. But we're talking about a different opposite here. The opposite that you're looking for is somebody who has probably done all this before. They probably own a lot of real estate, and quite honestly, they're probably tired of doing all the hard things that might come with it. They might be tired of going out and trying to find great deals on the front end. They might be tired of chasing down contractors who don't answer the phone or don't carry out a job like the expectations were set, like the vision that you have as an investor. They might be tired of writing scopes of work and walking into these houses. They might be tired of listing the property and having to go through the maintenance that you need to do when a house is on the market. I know that I get tired of doing those things, and it is my business. And so you want to find one of these people who are very experienced and probably tired of doing these things. And you're going to do all the work, whatever it takes. Work ethic, 10, baby. Everything that you got to do to make that deal work, everything that sounds nasty to this partner of yours, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it with a smile on your face. And that's what you're going to bring to the table. They're going to bring the money. You're going to bring the work, whatever it takes. So cash, you're not going to have to bring much cash. Bankability, your only bankability here, guys, is your reputation and your ability to put it all out on the line with work ethic. Now, skills, probably when you're starting out, this type of person that I'm talking about, they probably know that you don't have the same skills as them. But you see, you guys have the same interest. So this is actually potentially a mentor for you that's already been through it. They don't want to go out and do the work, but they're going to help you build up the skills. So your skills could be really low. However, there is a different side to this strategy as you grow in your business. You may still partner up, and maybe what you bring, instead of just work ethic, you say, hey, I've flipped a lot of houses. I know how to get great deals. I know how to get the top dollar on the market. I have subs that I work with all the time. That's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm going to bring the knife. You bring the butter. That means the money, and you're going to bring the skills. You got it. Risk. All right. Your risk on something like this is really low financially. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about risk. But once again, usually when there's low money risk, there's high reputation risk. And you really need to protect that. Guys, the small communities in the real estate investing world, you do not want to be somebody that is known for not being trustworthy, for not having high value ethics and reputation. Now, how do you find these partnerships? How do you find these partners, the guys with money? Well, you need to go to your real estate meetups locally. There's usually going to be Facebook groups out there, and you need to network. I know that sucks because networking takes a lot of time and you probably just want to go out there and buy houses, but build a strong foundation, guys, and you're going to build a business that keeps on giving for you. All right. Now, I know a lot of what we were talking about was how to do this with a little bit of cash, or in some cases, no cash. That does not mean that I think you should have zero cash. Now, I've said it plenty of times. I still use some of these strategies because really my goal is to try to keep my own cash out of deals as much as possible because that lowers my risk. It also allows me to do more deals, but that does not mean having zero cash in the bank. In fact, I think your reserves should be as high as you can possibly have them. That way, when issues come up, because issues do come up, it is part of the business, you can cover it instead of having to go chase more cash. I think that you should be in a safe position. And honestly, you gotta have discipline. Discipline and consistency are so important, and it takes discipline and consistency to save up a little bit of money, to save up a little bit of financial contingency. Now, what we're talking about, the real ticket to the game in all of this is having skills, and I mentioned it multiple times throughout this video. And skills is simply an equation. It's knowledge plus experience. And you're in the right place for knowledge. I hope you watch as many of my videos as you can, and I hope you watch other people's videos who have different perspectives and that maybe fit your strategies and your certain life situation better. And read books and go online and read articles. Do everything you can to stuff your brain with knowledge, but eventually you got to take some steps. You're going to have to get the other side of the equation, which is experience, and you're probably going to have to get into it. You're going to have to do things before you're totally ready. But over time, those two things will bring skills. And guys, once you have skills, you're unstoppable. You can buy houses at will. You can continue to invest in real estate. And when I say flip houses, I'm just talking about that as the first step, because flipping houses is the catalyst to investing in real estate. To instead of flip the house to the market and sell it, you actually refinance it and hold on to it till the day you retire and longer. Then you get the cash flow from the rental every month. And that's really what we're doing. We're really talking about building wealth. And wealth is not just the assets that you buy, it's the skills that you acquire. Now, this video was more like a roadmap than a driver's instruction manual. I didn't get into technical details of all this, but I've actually done a video where I get deeper into the details of different types of loans and how you get money. And I've linked that right here. Hope you go check it out. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. There's a train coming, so I need to pop off here.